The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the bustling city streets. Cars zoomed past, honking impatiently, and the sidewalks were crowded with people rushing to get home after a long day. Among them was a young boy named Jake, no older than 12, with a backpack slung over his shoulders. He had just finished school and was heading home, his mind filled with thoughts of homework and his favorite video games. But what happened next would change his life forever. As Jake waited at the pedestrian crossing, he noticed an elderly man struggling to step off the curb. The man was in a wheelchair, his hands gripping the wheels tightly. As he tried to maneuver forward, people walked past him, barely sparing a glance. Some were too lost in their own worlds, others too busy to care. But Jake couldn't ignore it. Something inside him told him he had to help. Without hesitation, he stepped forward. "Sir, do you need help?" he asked, his voice filled with genuine concern. The man looked up, his tired eyes meeting Jake's. There was a flicker of surprise, followed by a small, grateful smile. "That would be very kind of you, young man," he said. Jake carefully placed his hands on the back of the wheelchair and waited for the pedestrian signal to turn green. The traffic was loud, and the impatient drivers made the moment feel more intense than it actually was. But Jake remained calm, focused on getting the man across safely. As soon as the light changed, he pushed the wheelchair forward, guiding the man steadily across the street. It wasn't easy. The road was slightly uneven, and the pressure of making sure the man didn't tip over made Jake's heart race. But, step by step, he moved forward, determined to do the right thing. When they finally reached the other side, the man sighed with relief. "Thank you, son," he said, his voice carrying a deep sincerity. Not many people would stop to help. Jake simply shrugged. "It was no problem," he said, flashing a smile before preparing to walk away. He hadn't expected anything in return. Helping just felt like the right thing to do. But as he turned, the man called out to him. "Wait," he said. "What's your name?" "Jake," he answered, a little confused. The man studied him for a moment, as if seeing something beyond just a kind-hearted boy. "Jake," he repeated thoughtfully. "You remind me of someone I once knew." Jake wasn't sure what to say, but before he could respond, the man reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small card. He handed it to Jake, who glanced down at it. The card had a name, a logo, and an address. Something about it looked important, but Jake didn't recognize it. "Come visit me sometime," the man said, his voice warm but firm. "I'd like to thank you properly." Jake hesitated. He wasn't used to strangers offering him things, and he had always been taught to be cautious. But there was something about the man's eyes, an unspoken wisdom, a kindness that made Jake feel safe. He nodded slowly, tucking the card into his pocket. As he walked away, he couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just a simple thank you. Something about the way the man had looked at him, the way he had spoken, made Jake feel as if this encounter was meant to happen. But what could a simple act of kindness possibly lead to? Jake had no idea that his small gesture was about to set off a chain of events that would change his life forever. Jake walked home that evening, with the small card still tucked in his pocket. He couldn't stop thinking about the man in the wheelchair. There was something about him, something important, that Jake couldn't quite figure out. The way he had looked at him, the way he had spoken, it felt like more than just a simple thank you. But Jake pushed the thought aside. He was just a kid. What could be so special about him? That night, after finishing his homework, he pulled out the card again and studied it under the dim glow of his bedroom lamp. The name printed on it was Mr. Lawson. Below it was an address and a logo that looked familiar, but he couldn't place it. He thought about showing it to his mom, but she was busy working late, as she often did. His dad had left years ago, and with only his mom around, Jake had learned to be independent. The next day, curiosity got the best of him. After school, instead of heading straight home, he decided to check out the address. It wasn't too far, just a few bus stops away. As he walked down the street, he finally realized where he had seen the logo before. It was on a tall glass building in the city, one he had passed many times, but never paid much attention to. It was a company, but what kind? He wasn't sure. When he reached the entrance, he hesitated. This wasn't some small shop or office. It was a massive corporate building. He looked down at the card again, feeling out of place. What was a man in a wheelchair doing with a card from a place like this? And why had he given it to Jake? Just as he was about to turn back, a voice called out, "Can I help you, young man?" Jake spun around to see a receptionist standing near the glass doors, giving him a curious look. He fumbled with the card before holding it up. I was given this by Mr. Lawson," he said awkwardly. "He told me to visit." The woman's expression changed instantly. She glanced at the card, then back at Jake, before giving him a small smile. "Come with me," she said, leading him inside. Jake's heart pounded as he followed her through the sleek hallways. The whole building felt like a different world. Polished floors, large paintings on the walls, employees walking around in formal clothes. This was nothing like the places he usually went. Finally, they stopped in front of an office. The receptionist knocked lightly before opening the door. Inside, Mr. Lawson sat behind a large desk, looking over some papers. When he saw Jake, he smiled. "Ah, Jake, I was hoping you'd come." Jake stepped inside hesitantly, still not sure what he had walked into. "What is this place?" he asked. Mr. Lawson gestured for him to sit. "This," he said, "is my company." Jake's eyes widened. "Your company?" He glanced around, taking in the expensive-looking office. "But You thought I was just an old man in a wheelchair struggling to cross the street." Mr. Lawson chuckled. "That's what most people see. But in business, and in life, things aren't always what they seem." Jake shifted in his seat. "So, why did you ask me to come here?" Mr. Lawson leaned forward, his expression turning serious. "Because I see something in you, Jake. Something rare. You stopped to help a stranger when no one else did. That tells me you have a good heart. And in this world, that matters more than, you know." Jake wasn't sure how to respond. No one had ever told him something like that before. "But I'm just a kid." "Maybe," Mr. Lawson said, "but kindness and integrity don't have an age limit." For a moment, there was silence. Jake still didn't understand why he was here. Was this just a long way of saying thank you? Then, Mr. Lawson took out another card. This one different. He slid it across the desk to Jake. "I want to offer you something," he said. "A chance to learn, a chance to grow. I run a mentorship program for young people who show promise. It's not about grades or where you come from. It's about character. And you, Jake, have that." Jake stared at the card. His mind raced. This wasn't just a thank you. This was an opportunity. One that felt too big for him to even understand. But, "Why me?" he asked. Mr. Lawson smiled again, but this time, there was something deeper in his eyes. "Because someone once gave me a chance when I least expected it, and it changed my life. Now it's my turn to do the same for someone else." Jake swallowed hard. This was too much to take in. A day ago, he was just another kid walking home from school. Now he was sitting in a powerful man's office, being offered something that could change everything. He didn't know what to say, and just as he was about to respond, a knock at the door interrupted them. A man in a suit entered. whispering something to Mr. Lawson. His expression darkened slightly before he nodded and turned back to Jake. "I have to take care of something," he said. "Think about it, Jake. This could be the beginning of something incredible." Jake nodded slowly, gripping the card in his hand. He had no idea what he was getting himself into, but deep down, he knew one thing for sure. His life was never going to be the same again. Jake walked out of the office, gripping the card tightly in his hand. His heart was pounding, his mind racing with questions. Was this real? Could he actually be part of something bigger just because he had helped a stranger cross the street? It all felt too unreal, like something out of a movie. That night, he couldn't sleep. He kept replaying the conversation in his head, wondering what it all meant. Mr. Lawson had seen something in him, something special. But was he really special? He was just a regular kid, trying to do the right thing. Could that really be enough to change his life? The next day, after school, he found himself standing outside the tall glass building again. He didn't even remember deciding to go back. His feet had just carried him there. Taking a deep breath, he stepped inside. The receptionist recognized him immediately and led him down a different hallway into a conference room. Inside, there were a few other kids, all looking just as nervous as he felt. Some were older, some younger, but they all had one thing in common. They looked like they didn't know why they were here either. Mr. Lawson entered the room, his wheelchair moving smoothly across the floor. "I'm glad you came back, Jake," he said with a nod before turning to the others. "All of you are here because you showed kindness when no one else did. That may seem small, but trust me, it's the most important thing in the world." Jake listened closely as Mr. Lawson explained what his mentorship program was really about. It wasn't just about business or success. It was about making a difference. He had built his company from nothing, and along the way, he had met people who had helped him, people who had believed in him when no one else did. Now, he wanted to do the same for others. He looked around at the kids sitting beside him. Each of them had their own story. One had helped a lost child find their way home. Another had stood up for someone being bullied. Every single one of them had done something small but meaningful. Jake felt a strange sense of belonging. He had never thought much about what a single good deed could lead to. He had only helped because it was the right thing to do. But now, he realized that one small act of kindness could ripple outward in ways he had never imagined. Over the next few weeks, Jake attended meetings, listened to lessons about leadership and responsibility, and learned from people who had once been just like him, ordinary kids given an extraordinary opportunity. One evening, after a long session, he stayed back to talk to Mr. Lawson. "Why do you do all this?" he asked. "You could just run your company and not worry about us." Mr. Lawson smiled, looking out the window at the city lights. "Because someone once told me that success means nothing if you don't use it to help others," he said. "I spent years chasing money, power, and recognition, but in the end, what truly mattered were the lives I touched along the way." Jake thought about that. He had never considered what success really meant. He had always assumed it was about having a big house, fancy cars, or lots of money, but maybe it was something more. Months passed, and Jake continued to learn and grow. He gained confidence, met new people, and started to see the world differently. And then one day, Mr. Lawson called him into his office. "You've done well, Jake," he said, "and I think you're ready for something more." Jake raised an eyebrow. "More?" Mr. Lawson chuckled. "How would you feel about working with me? Learning directly from me, not just as a student, but as someone who can help make a real impact." Jake was speechless. He had never expected this. "You mean, like a job?" "Something like that," Mr. Lawson said. Not just a job, though. A chance to help others the way you helped me that day on the street. What do you say? Jake didn't even need to think about it. I'd love to. Mr. Lawson extended a hand, and Jake shook it, feeling a surge of excitement. He had started this journey by simply doing the right thing. Now, that one moment had led him to something he never could have imagined. A future filled with purpose, opportunities, and the chance to make a real difference. As he walked out of the office, he couldn't help but smile. He had learned something powerful. Kindness was never wasted. Even the smallest act could open doors to a future beyond anything he had ever dreamed.